Hi everyone, Brad DeRoche here. Welcome back. We are in lesson number 9 in our series of guitar fundamentals, and today's lesson is going to be on the left hand, positioning and movement of the fingers. To start with, in the left hand, the first thing that I would like for you to consider is how to bring the hand up to the neck in a very natural way to produce the ease of your facility and to avoid injury. So it's actually a fairly simple maneuver. You're just going to let your hand hang down at your side. I'll stand up so you can kind of see where mine is here. So it's just hanging down at your side here. Then you're going to rotate the left hand so that the palm is facing forward. That movement is called supination. So we're going to supinate or rotate the forearm so that our palm is up. Now we don't want to go extreme to the point where we can't move any further, but we also need to have some angle to play. So supinate here. Then the next step is to simply bend at the elbow and bring the hand up to the fingerboard. So you can't see my hand at the moment, but I'm going to supinate and then bend at the elbow, and it brings me up to the center of the neck. Supination, bend at elbow, and I'll be right here. All right, so that's the center. For me, I usually land right around the 5th fret. So it's pretty natural. I'll come up here, boom, 5th fret. That's just where I'm at. So, and that's where I want to be. I want to be in the center of the neck. So I want to be able to move to the other sides of that, but this needs to be my center. All right, so first point is the supination and bend at the elbow so that you have this here. All right. The next thing that we want to look at when we're playing is the angle of the wrist here, the left wrist. And a lot of times when people play, they tend to bend too much, so they're playing with a pretty extreme angle in the wrist. And this is a recipe for disaster. You're going to end up with carpal tunnel syndrome or tendonitis or tenosynovitis or something like that, because you're really putting a lot of stress on the nerves coming through the carpal bone here when you're bent like so. So we want to avoid that. And most of the time this happens for most people when the neck angle gets too low. So you see this in maybe more in acoustic steel string players. But when they're playing here, just playing a couple of simple chords, no problem. But then when they go to reach for a low chord, low notes here, and they have to bend to get the fingers around like so. All right, so here we are, right angle, complete turn in the wrist. And so if you're running into that a lot, if you're really bending your wrist a lot, consider bringing the angle up slightly higher. I'll bet closer to 90, maybe, of course not this, but a little higher. That might alleviate some of that stress in the wrist. Okay, next point, we need to think about movement of the fingers. When the fingers are moving here, we want to move from the knuckle joint. It's very much like the right hand movement I talked about in previous lessons. So move from the knuckle joint primarily, and they just move down and they touch the fret and the string. So what I want to do is I want to position my left hand in a very relaxed state so that the fingertips are right above the strings that I'm going to play. And all I have to do is press down a little ways to touch the string and relax, and my finger goes back to its natural place, which is resting above the string. In order to do that, I want to make sure that the knuckle joint here is above the plane of the strings when I play. All right, so this would be the natural position that I would play in. See if you can see it from this angle. I don't know how well that's going to work, but we're going to try it. So notice that the knuckle joint here is above the plane of the strings when I'm playing. All right, so that'll be the same when I'm in the normal playing position. It's bend, bring up here, knuckles are up above the strings. Okay, maybe this. All right, and that's going to hold true going across the strings. So a little exercise you could do here just to make sure that you're maintaining that would be just a simple chromatic exercise, maybe 4 notes in a row on each string, something like so. So if I start out on the 5th fret here, knuckles are above the string, not a really strong angle in the wrist, a little bit, but not a right angle. And as I go across here, my positioning is about the same from here to here. All right, so all I've done is I've moved at the elbow. I've rocked my elbow backward or forward in order to reach the low strings or high strings. But my knuckles have stayed above the plane of the strings. Okay, another very important facet for most players that they tend to get wrong is they relax this supination movement and allow the fourth finger side of the hand to sort of pull away from the neck. So imagine if I did this, if I just relax a little bit and I'm playing up here on the first string, first finger, no problem, I can play it quite well. Second finger, no problem. Third finger, I'm starting to reach a bit, but then when it comes to the fourth finger, now I've got this little finger is completely flattened out. And the reason for that is that I've allowed this side of the hand to be too far away from the neck. So what I need to do is to bring that side of the hand back around here. Once again, it's that supination movement. So I bring this side around here and it lines it up so that all of my fingers are playing in the exact same way. So one's not reaching out and playing flat and the other ones are pulled back. All right, this is sort of like looks more like violin technique. But I want to try to make sure that they're all in the same plane and playing in the same manner. All right, so that's a really important point to keep in mind. A lot of people sort of miss that one. So bringing the fourth finger side around. All right. Next, when it comes to playing, you want to make sure that you're on the tip of the finger most of the time, except for bar chords and a few other things. But most of the time we want to stay right on the tip of the finger. And a good little exercise that I do for that one is I just simply tap the finger into the string. So I'm going to pick third string right in the center here and just tap. Tap, 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 tap. And when I do that, it creates a little impression in the fingertip. I don't know if you can see that, but that should be right in the center of the finger. And when I do that, I want to land in the same groove every single time. So tap, 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 land in the same groove in your fingertip each time you do it. Try that with first finger and then move to second finger on the next fret, third finger, and finally fourth finger. And so as you're doing this, move from the knuckle joint. So you're way back here, third finger, second, and so on. And you want to make sure you land in the same groove each time. So that's a really beautiful little exercise for doing that. It's very simple. Don't stress and strain when you're doing it. Make it light. All right. So that'll help to make sure you're staying in the center of the fingertip when you play. Now, a lot of times people play with too much pressure and they push down too hard. So when we're doing something like that chromatic exercise, if you're working too hard, that can be a problem. Or if you're not pushing hard enough, you'll get these kind of splattering splats. It's kind of an ugly sound. And it happens sometimes. We get them. I get them in my playing, and after a while, you got to consider that kind of the same thing as a wrong note. It's just sloppy. So no splats in your playing, all right? And that usually comes from not having enough pressure. So here's a great little exercise for that. You can start by just touching the string and muting it, then pushing a little harder, then still harder, splat, and then finally the full sound. So what you're trying to do is to get used to this amount of pressure that you need to get the note to sound clean, and nothing more than that. So it's just a minimal amount of pressure. If you want to practice a light touch, if you're used to pushing too hard, then practice with splats. Make every note splat. It's actually quite hard to do. All right. So anyway, that little exercise can help to give you a lighter touch if you need that. All right, and then one of the last things to look at here is the placement of the finger between the frets here. So a lot of times people tend to play more in the center directly between the two frets, and that's not the best place to play. You want to be as close to the fret wire as possible. So instead of in the center here, maybe it's a little easier on one of these lower strings. There's more space between them. But here's a bad place to play, and listen, splat, clean sound. So what you have to get used to doing is getting right next to the fret wire and feeling what that is like when it touches the side of your finger when you play. All right, so once again, that little chromatic pattern is a great exercise for this. Can you feel the side of the finger on the fret when you're playing? So try that out. Good little experiment for the left hand. So you're trying to get right up next to the fret wire, not in between the frets where it splats. You can get it clean, but you have to press much harder. Then it will also bend the string out of tune and other problems. So we looked at a number of different topics today in the left hand. Let's just quickly review. First and foremost, it's that supination movement, the rotation of the forearm so that your palm is up. So, and then you bend at the elbow, brings you to the center. Try to avoid getting too much bend in the wrist when you play. If you are, you're probably too low at the angle. You need to bring it up here. Next, you need to keep the knuckles above the plane of the strings and not down here. Lots of people tend to play down here, and that means you're always playing in an extended hand state instead of a relaxed one. So make sure you get your knuckles up above the string. Then make sure when you're playing that you have you're touching right next to the fret wire, and you're not playing in the center, and that you have a nice light touch when you're playing. All right, so don't push too hard. Just try to lighten the touch up some. And I think that's most of the things that we covered today, and hopefully it'll give you a little bit better mechanics when you're playing, a little bit more facility, and help you to avoid some injuries also, which plague many of us. Oh yeah, the one other thing I forgot to say was the fourth finger, bringing that around here. So make sure that that's really quite a crucial one. A lot of people do get this wrong. So we get it from kind of playing down here a lot, so we want to make sure that we're turned this way. Play in the center a little bit more might help you with that. Anyway, so bring the fourth finger around this way. That's one of the other things to think about. All right, hope this helped you, and keep practicing, and hope you enjoy all this stuff, and hope it's improving your playing a little bit. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson. Cheers.